what happened in 20th century was passage from the whole era of world history, namely from society of producers to society of consumers. On the other hand, you had the processes of fragmentation of human life. When I was young, it was ages ago, we were impressed by Jean-Paul Sartre, who told us that we need to create projet de la vie, project for life, and once we selected the project for life, we have to go step by step, consistently from one year to another, closer to this ideal. Now, tell that to the present-day youth, and they will laugh at you, really. We are in great difficulty to guess what will happen to us next year, and project for life, for the whole life, is something incredible. Life is split into episodes. It was not like that at the beginnings of 20th century. Societies have been individualized, namely, instead of thinking in terms of community to which you belong, nation to which you belong, political movement to which you belong, and so on, people tend to think, redefine the meaning of life, the purpose of life, the happiness in life, to what is happening to one's own person, the questions of identity, which play such a tremendously important role today in the world. You have to create your own identity. You don't inherit it. You not only you need to make it from scratch, but you have to spend your life, in fact, redefining your identity, because the styles of life, what is considered to be good for you and bad for you, the attractive, tempting forms of life change so many times in your life. If I try to list all fashions in this respect, which changed in 86 years of my life, well, we would probably have to spend several hours here talking in order to just to name them all. So all these have changed. There are plenty of changes, not just the passage from totalitarianism to democracy, but so many other things. And I am afraid that we can't really, with hand on our hearts, say which of these changes is the most lasting and will influence the life of next generations of our grandchildren or great-grandchildren. But I still am unable to say whether it is the beginning of the new form of life, which will last for centuries, or whether it is a period of transition from one kind of social order to another kind of social order. When you are in a process of transition, it's very difficult to imagine another kind of a stable solution, settlement of human cohabitation. But then it comes sooner or later. So even that question is, if we are unable to answer. I can, with some degree of responsibility, say that two things happened which are irreversible. Only two things I can say they are really irreversible. One thing is that we have multiplied, we humanity on the planet, and the connections, the relationships, the interdependencies, the communication spread all over the globe. We are now in a position that we are all dependent on each other. What happens in Malaysia, you know it or you don't know it, you feel it or you don't feel it, has tremendous importance on the prospects of life for young people in Sao Paulo. And vice versa. We are all in the same boat. This is the first time in history where the globe is really one country, in a sense. The second issue is that after 300 years, roughly, of modern history, when our ancestors decided to take over nature under human management, and thus hoped that they will make nature absolutely obedient to human needs and human wishes, and there will be full control over what's happening in the world. Now that came to an end because in the result of our own successes and our ancestors' successes, development of modern technology, of efficiency, of the ability to produce more and more and more, reach for all sorts of natural resources of the planet and so on. In the result of all this tremendous success of science and sociology, we came very close to what we now understand are the limits of endurability of the planet. I am humble sociologist. I don't have any prophetic abilities, really. I never learned any methodology of prophecy in my 60-odd years doing sociology. So I don't know how it will eventually develop. I can only tell you what are the dangers today to democracy, really. One is what I already mentioned, namely the divorce between power and politics. Because if that is the case, then the state, the only political institution which we don't have a global political institution, the state is not powerful enough to keep all the promises which states 50 years ago gave to the citizens. And that was the golden era of democracy. The 30 after-war years was the proliferation and thriving of idea of democracy. Now democracy is on the way down. Less and less people are really deeply convinced that it's a good thing. They are doubtful about the quality of democracy. Why? Simply because the relatively powerless state can offer citizens less and less. What states are doing, with very few exceptions, most states today are doing, is contracting out the many functions which state was expected to perform. Who knows, perhaps, here I am engaging in prophecy already, we will invent a global democracy sometime. And that would be a radical solution, mind you, because I don't believe that the framework of the nation state any longer is able to defend on its own the future of democracy, for reasons which I mentioned before. Right? So we will have to invent, not I am too old for that, but you and your generation will have to invent global equivalent to the inventions of our forefathers. They invented nationwide democracy, nationwide representative democracy, parliaments, modern parliament. They invented jurisdiction, not a local, traditional, habitual, customary laws, but one unified code of law for the whole country. All the things which create modern democracy, they invented. If Aristotle was invited to building of any of the contemporary parliaments, Aristotle, who first used the concept of democracy and described it, right? He would probably enjoy what he sees, because people quarrel, they represent different views, they argue, then they vote, they come to some agreement. He would like it. But then if someone told him that that is democracy, he would laugh, because democracy he described in ancient Athens was just people coming to the marketplace, and fighting each other and coming to some resolution. which means that democracy is a notion which acquires over time in history different forms and different instruments, different strategies. So I can, of one thing, be sure that if you really invent global equivalent to nation-state democracy, then it will be a democracy, okay, but it won't be the institutions of democracy which we know, only bigger. It will be not similar to these institutions, because these institutions, which we now call democratic, were created, were adjusted to the needs of a nation-state. And then Castoriadis goes and says that autonomous individual and autonomous community, polity, can only exist together. One needs another, right? You can't be individual in a tyrannical society, in a totalitarian society. You are not really an individual. It must be a cooperation of the two autonomies with each other. It was very beautiful, but the danger came from unexpected side. When Castoriadis wrote these words, he wrote them against totalitarianism up there. We, again, terribly sorry for remembering the prehistorical past, but when I was young, I was afraid that all the danger will come from the public sphere. George Orwell memorably put it this way: we are afraid of the soldiers' boot trampling human face. All right, that was a danger, there's no question about that. Our ancestors, and partly my own generation, managed to get over this danger, move it aside. We are not any longer afraid, really, as I was in my young, of the individuality being overwhelmed by the pressures from the top, censorship, the secret police and so on. There are some remnants of it, but much alleviated, mitigated by comparison. The danger, however, to this autonomy came from the other side, from the sphere of the private and the individual. The nearest approximation, contemporary approximation of agora, of the place where democracy was made and remade and continued and developed and protected, the nearest approximation of it are chat shows on television, talk shows, and that's where masses watch, participate, telephone, send questions, messages, and something similar to what was done in ancient agora. Now, when you look at it, they are not discussing our shared interests. They are not discussing the well-being of society. They are not discussing what needs to be done to abolish and repair the troubles which we all suffer in one extent and in another. They just confess their ultimately private, individual and very intimate problems, right? Ehrenberg, the French sociologist, famously pointed out that in his view, the postmodern revolution started on one Wednesday evening in 1980s, one autumn of 1980s, when certain Vivienne, that ordinary woman, in the presence of 6 million TV viewers, declared that she never experienced orgasm in her marriage because her husband, Michel, suffers of premature ejaculation. That was revolution, start of the revolution. Why start a revolution? Because suddenly on the agora people started confessing things which were the embodiment of privacy, embodiment of intimacy, which you would confine only if you were a Catholic to the priest on confession, or to your really very, very close circle of very intimate friends. But you wouldn't go to the public square and shout about it. So agora has been conquered not by totalitarian regimes, but by precisely that, by privacy, by things which previously were privacy. In confessionals, which are the embodiment, the incarnation of intimacy and privacy, you converse there with God directly. And there is absolute secrecy. No one can know what you confess to in confessional. We have installed microphones in confessionals. One addict of Facebook confided in me, not confided, he actually boasted to me that he made 500 friends in one day. My reply was that I live 86 years, but I don't have 500 friends. I didn't manage to do it. So presumably, when he says friend and I say friend, we don't mean the same thing. It's a different kind of friend. I never heard when I was young the concept of network. I heard about human bonds, I heard about communities, this sort of thing, but not network. What is the difference between community and network? Community precedes you. You are born into a community. On the other hand, we have network. What is network? Unlike community, network is made and maintained, kept alive by two different activities. One is connecting, and the other is disconnecting. And I think that the attractiveness of the new type of friendship, Facebook type of friendship, I call it, is precisely in that. That it is so easy to disconnect. It is easy to connect, to make friends. But the greatest attraction is the facility of disconnecting. Just imagine if you have not online friendship, not online connection, not online sharing, but offline connection, real connection, face to face, body to body, eye to eye. Then breaking relationship is always a very traumatic event. You have to find excuses, you have to explain, you have to lie very often, and even then you don't feel safe because the partner would say, well, you have no right, you are swine, you are pig, you are whatever, overman, and so on. It's difficult, but on internet it's so easy, you just press delete and that's it. Instead of 500 friends, you have 499, but it is only a temporary irritant because tomorrow you will have another 500. That undermines human bonds. Human bonds are a mixture of blessing and a curse. Blessing, because it is really tremendously pleasurable and tremendously satisfying to have another partner on whom you can rely and do something for him or for her. It's some kind of experience which is unavailable to the Facebook friendship. So it's a blessing. And I think that very many young people are not even aware what they lost because they never experienced this sort of situation. On the other hand, it is a curse because once you enter the bond, you expect to stay there forever. You swear, you take an oath, till death do us part, right? Forever. But what does it mean? It does mean that you mortgage your future. Perhaps tomorrow or next month or next year, there will be new opportunities, now unheard of. You can't predict them, and you won't be able to pick them, these new opportunities, because you will be already tied by your old commitments, old obligations. So it's a very ambivalent situation, and hence the curious phenomenon of this person, solitary person in a crowd of solitaries, right? We are all in solitude and in a crowd in the same time. That there are two essential values which are absolutely indispensable for a satisfying, rewarding, relatively happy life. One is security, the other is freedom. You can't be happy, you can't have a decent, dignified human life in the absence of one of them, right? Security without freedom is slavery. Freedom without security is complete chaos, inability to do anything, plan anything, even dream about anything. So you need both. The trouble, however, is that no one yet in history and on the planet found the golden formula, the perfect mixture of security and freedom. Each time you get more security, you surrender a bit of your freedom. There's no other way. Each time you get a bit more freedom, you surrender part of your security. So you gain something and you lose something. 70-odd years ago, Sigmund Freud published this famous and tremendously profound and influential book called Civilization and Its Discontents. He said that civilization is always an exchange, a trade-off, as he put it, trade-off. You give something of one value in order to get something of the other value. And he said, he wrote it in 1920s, and at that time he said that our problem, their problem of the old generation, was that they surrendered too much freedom for the sake of security. My deep conviction is that if Freud was giving this interview of me at the moment, he would probably repeat that every civilization is an exchange, a trade-off. But his diagnosis will be exactly opposite, that our troubles come today from the fact that we have surrendered too much of our security for the sake of more freedom. That's a dilemma. I think that I sense already some prodromal signs that the pendulum is beginning to move back towards more security. Social state comes again into public favors. People dream about it, They want stronger powers and more stability, a little bit more stability. It's very beginning. I'm not saying that we are already on the way, but there are signs that is happening. So my conclusions are twofold. One, we will never find the perfect solution of the dilemma between security and freedom. There always will be too much of one and too little of the other, right? And the second, that we will never stop looking for such a golden mean. That I don't believe that there is one way of being happy. There are many ways of being happy. There are two, in this little book about art of life, I wrote that there are two factors, independent factors, relatively independent factors, which shape up human life One is fate. Fate is the short name for all things on which we have no influence, which happen to us, but they are not of our doing. That's fate. And the other is character. And character is a very individual thing. You can work on your character if you want. You can change it, you can improve it. It is under your control to a very great extent. The division of labor between fate and character is such that the fate sets the range of options which are realistic to you. On that you have no influence. If you were born 20 years earlier than you were, your range of options will be different. If you were born 20 years later, again it will be different. If you were born in this suburb, affluent suburb, you have one range of options. If you are born in a ghetto, it's completely different range of options. But there is always a range of options which is provided by fate. But the choices between these options are made by character. And because characters are very many and very different, you can't give one recipe for happiness. I know that there are counselors now who earn quite a lot of money by pretending that they have recipes for happiness. Don't believe them. They are, they are hoodwinking you. I would never dare to give such an advice. Well, I am not comparing myself with Socrates, but very many philosophers, contemporary philosophers, consider life of Socrates, his personality, which he constructed, as the most perfect, relatively perfect, which you can imagine. But what does it mean? Does it mean that if Socrates' kind of life, which he selected, is the perfect solution for Socrates anyway, does it mean that we all should imitate Socrates and try to be like him? No. The answer is on the contrary, because precisely Socrates considered a secret of his happiness in that he, on his own, by his own will, created the form of life which he lived. People who imitate somebody else's form of life, somebody else's model of happiness, are not like Socrates. On the contrary, they betray his recipe. They betray his recipe because his recipe precisely. Well, you can translate it in a simple term, saying that for every human being there is a perfect world made especially for him or for her.